Hello, I appreciate you tuning in. I'm Dennis Tucker. I preach LKilc Road Church of Christ, Lynchville, Kentucky. And I want you to maybe take the time here, just sit back for a few minutes and to study with me to think about a certain person out of the Bible, lesson we learn from them. Because there are numerous, what we often with use the phrase minor characters in the Bible, and that can have a pretty big definition, pretty broad scope of people mentioned in the Bible. And this lesson is going to deal with one of them. Now, when I mention Jacob out of the Old Testament, what comes to your mind? Who comes to your mind? Maybe a better question. And we may think of, first of all, Joseph. Joseph being a son of Jacob, and quite a bit of Genesis is about him and his relationship to his father. But then what else we may think of? All 12 sons of Jacob. The 12 tribes of Israel came out of Jacob. So we may honestly think about that. Those 12. We may think of Rachel. We may think of his wife, the one he really loved, and her having Joseph Benjamin. And then we may also think of Laban. I mean, quite a bit of Genesis deals with Laban's interactions, Jacob, and how the kind of relationship they have there. But one person that often is not really talked about very much is Leah. And that's what this lesson will be about. We want to concentrate here for a few minutes upon Leah. It's a lesson we learn from her. Now, the background of this lesson, if you look in Genesis, and God made promises to Abraham in the 12th chapter of Genesis, going all the way through the 22nd chapter of Genesis, in which God had promised Abraham actually three main promises, right? I mean, he had promised him that he would receive a land that God would show him, which turned out to be the land of Canaan. He promised him that he would have a great lineage of many descendants could come from him, a great nation, in fact, could come from him. And then specifically, he was promised that through his seed, all the nations of the earth should be blessed. And then as we go on, we find Isaac is mentioned, and that promise was made to Isaac also, as far as the fact that, what he received. And then eventually it was made to Jacob. Also, he received that same promise over in Genesis 20th chapter, verse 14. And there it said, also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, to the north and the south. And in you and in your seed, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And that, of course, refers to later on. And so that the promise made to Jacob. Now Isaac doesn't want Jacob to marry any of the daughters of the land of Canaan. It's gotten to a point that Jacob's now of marrying age. And so Isaac doesn't want him to marry any of these ladies around him, so he sends him back to Paddan Aram, as my Bible translates it. And that is the area specifically to Haran, which is, of course, where Abraham came from, that area there, in order to find a wife. So that's kind of gives you the background of our setting here, because as you go through the 29th chapter, when Jacob actually goes to Paddan Aram and goes to Haran, that he meets there the descendants of Abraham. And so if you look at Genesis 29 chapter verse 9, it says, now while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. So we are introduced there to Rachel. Then you go down to verse 16 of the same chapter, where you find, well, actually after verse 9, there is this thing where basically Jacob comes to Laban's household, and Laban offers to pay him to help or to take care of his flocks. And so down verse 16, so now Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, so she's the oldest, and the name of the other was Rachel. And then verse 17 said, then Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel's beautiful in form and appearance. And so you think about these two sisters. Now, Rachel's described here as being the prettier, the beautiful sister. And as you look at it, there's been a lot of different discussions about what exactly, when it says Leah's eyes were delicate. And I know that some have taken a funny view that they like the sparkle, that she was, maybe there are weak eyes, that she had trouble seeing and things on that eyes. Then others have taken almost the opposite point of view, and that is that they were actually very lovely eyes. But that really is not germane here. What's important here is to understand the comparison between the two sisters. One is compared of having delicate eyes, and the other was beautiful in form and appearance. And so we think about this maybe in modern day terms, and I kind of think of like that. And as Rachel was really the pretty one, she was the one that maybe in high school, when there are certain girls that when they're walking down the aisle or walking down the hallway, that they're the ones that the boys stop and they want to look at her. Everybody is thinking that she's pretty. Now she's the homecoming queen type of person you think about. And so she would be getting all the attention, and Leah was the one not getting that kind of attention. In fact, Leah may have been the one that if the boys wanted, if they were talking to Leah, it may have been to actually get Rachel's phone number. And I mean, that's kind of the way it, as far as I view it, the comparison between the two. And so it cannot have been easy, necessarily being the other sister, the not so pretty sister. Now, I don't mean to imply that Leah was just plain ugly or anything like that, but honestly, there's something that Rachel stood out more than Leah did. And then as you look at this, you find that Jacob makes a deal, makes a promise, basically work 7 years for Rachel. They'll go down to Genesis 29, verse 18. Now, Jacob loved Rachel. So he said, I'll serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And 7 years is quite a long time period. In fact, the thing about it is that 7 years back then is still the same as 7 years now. And you may think here that this shows here a number of things. It shows, first of all, a lot of patience. And to wait 7 years to take a wife, the patience there. It shows a sense of commitment, that I'm willing to do this for 7 years. And so that's not just a half-hearted commitment. That is a very big commitment there. And all this showed how much he loved Rachel. And it says the fact that Jacob loved Rachel. And he shows it here by this commitment to work 7 years for her. And as I read through that, I thought, I wonder how Leah felt about this. After all, she's the older sister, and as we're going to find out, the custom in that place was that the older would marry before the younger. And so here's the older sister maybe looking and saying, this man over here is working for my sister. Why not for me? And that, you can see where maybe there have been some her feelings about that. Then going on a little bit farther, we find that when it comes time for Jacob to get married or to receive Rachel, that he is deceived and tricked into taking instead Leah. If you look at Genesis 29, verse 23, and start reading there with me, it said, now, it came to pass in evening that took Leah his daughter, talking about he there being Laban, took Leah's daughter and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. And so it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? There's a lot of things about this passage, by the way, that just kind of makes me scratch when I said and wonder about this here. And one of those is how Jacob could not have known this is Leah instead of Rachel. We think of working for 7 years that he would realize the difference between the two ladies, the two sisters. But as you look at there, now obviously Leah did not just speak up and identify herself to Jacob. But as I read through this here, and there are things again, and there's questions about this, that is, you notice here, Leah was not necessarily asked if she wanted to marry Jacob. She is simply, and that kind of goes along with how women often in other cultures, the times of the Bible, times of like the history like this here, women were treated more as property and not really considered or consulted about things. And so obviously Laban has the idea, he doesn't really care if Leah wants to marry Jacob or not. That is who he decides on to marry. And so he goes and takes Leah, puts her inside Jacob's tent. And so again, Leah wasn't asked if she wanted to marry Jacob. And I just kind of wonder, how did Leah feel about this arrangement? And obviously it is of no matter, no consequence of that as far as this. And how do you think Leah felt the next morning? And that is when Jacob finds out that he has the wrong bride here, that he has basically married somebody he had not intended to marry. That you look at here, how do you think? Because after all, here's a husband that honestly did not want her. As you think about the questions that he asked of Laban, what have you done to me? Now, was it not for Rachel that I worked all these 7 years? Why then have you deceived me? All this here had to be very hurtful to Leah in the sense that he didn't want her. And not only that, but also as we go through on, we find that he, in fact, loves Rachel so much that he makes a commitment to work 7 more years for Rachel. If you go down to verse 30. Then Jacob also went into Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He served with Leah another 7 years. So that's 14 years in essence that he works for Rachel, which shows the love he had for her. Now, 7 years is a long time. 14 years double that time. If 7 years shows commitment, 14 years shows more of a commitment, right? And so he's making a great commitment here. And again, I have to wonder how Leah felt about this here, that she has a husband who wants the other woman, the other sister, more than me. And at that point there, we find the Lord blesses Leah, though. And in Genesis 29, verse 31, it said, when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And so Leah would have children, at least originally here at the beginning, Leah would have children, and Rachel at this point would not. And so we start reading about these children that Leah has. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes here. But as you look at the children are very important in this time period. Now, even today, I mean, children are important, but in that day and age, it was also considered a sign of blessings for God, a sign of wealth, a sign of prosperity. Your lineage is going to carry on. And socially, it'd be a great amount of influence put on this. So socially speaking, one would think that Leah may have been actually more exalted than Rachel, because she was the one having the baby. She's the one having the children. And this created strife between the two sisters, and jealousy between the two sisters as we read through this passage. And that is, Leah having children causes problems, not just between Leah and Rachel, but between Rachel and Jacob. If you go to the 30th chapter of Genesis, verse 1 here, and notice that now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, give me children or else I die. You have to get me pregnant, basically. You have to give me a child or I just can't stand anymore. And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel. He says, am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Are you blaming me for this? Are you saying it's my fault for this here? God is the one not giving you children. And if you look here, we find that actually he's, whether intentionally or unintentionally, he is very right, and that is that God had closed up basically the womb of Rachel. And so we find here that there's envy going on. And Rachel, and as a result of that, as you go on down in verse 3 here, Rachel does something that was almost unimaginable today, and that is she turns around and gives her handmaiden, Leah, to Jacob to have her children, to have her, that her handmaiden is going to be a surrogate mother. And Rachel's going to claim those children for herself. Now, not to be outdone, by the way, and this kind of shows you how really strange and how much tension and rivalry is going on between these two sisters. Not to be outdone, eventually when Leah quit having babies, she then turns and gives her handmaid, Zilpah, to Jacob to have two more children by Jacob. Now, again, that Leah is going to claim for her children, being in her and Jacob's lineage. And this just gives a point, in fact, that by the time you go to the Genesis 30, verse 14, it gets to a point where Leah basically purchases from Rachel the right to have Jacob come into her tent that night. Because in Genesis 30, verse 14, it said, now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field. And some brought them to his mother Leah. Now mandrakes here in the New King James, in some translations, it has another phrase here, and the idea here that some believe is that this was kind of like an aphrodisiac. This was kind of like a love potion, or had that effect on people. And so she's wanting to use them. And then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, is it a small matter? You're taking away my husband? No, sir, my husband? I'm the one married him first. He's my husband. Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? He's my son. Reuben's my child. And Rachel said, therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. In other words, I'll make this deal with you, and that is you can have Jacob for the night if you just have Reuben give me his mandrakes. And when Jacob, verse 16, when Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I've surely hired you one of my son's mandrakes, and he lay with her that night. Hired her. I said she had hired him. She had purchased him, bought him, basically, his services for that night. And again, that just kind of shows you the kind of relationship going on here between Rachel and Leah. And then we have Leah's children mentioned. And we're just focusing mainly on Leah in this lesson. We have Leah's children mentioned. And it's just interesting, we go through these children, what she says. And Reuben is first child. Reuben's first child. In Genesis 29 chapter, verse 32. Just kind of back up some to Genesis 29 chapter, because there we start reading about these children. So verse 32, so Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, the Lord has surely let my affliction. Now, therefore, my husband will love me. What about this here? She understood that Jacob loved Rachel and not her. Now may my husband now love me that I give him a son. Which adds a lot there. I mean, just it shows you where Leah's coming from. Then Simeon comes along. Genesis 29, verse 33. Again, read what she says. Then she conceived again and bore a son and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me his son also. And she called his name Simeon. So he said, God knows I'm not the loved one here. He has heard that I am unloved. Nobody's here to argue that Rhea was being hypersensitive or wrong about this here. Apparently she's pretty spot on about this. And then you go to Levi, the third son, in Genesis 29, verse 34. She conceived again and bore a son and said, now this time my husband become attached to me. And because I've borne him 3 sons, therefore his name is called Levi. Now she looks at it and said, maybe now he will be attached to me. Which again shows that she did not always think that he was very attached to her. But his attention is towards Rachel. And then Judah, the fourth son, Genesis 29, verse 35. She conceived again and bore a son, and now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she stopped bearing. Praise the Lord. She attributed this to God, her having these children. And again, she's right. As you go on here, we find there at the last part, they shall stop having children, bearing children. That's when we start having her giving the handmaid to Jacob to have children, and a handmaid had 2 sons. But we go on, but eventually it starts having children again. And so Issachar comes along, Genesis 30, verse 18. Leah said, God's given me my wages because I have given my maid to my husband. So she calls his name Issachar. God, and this is after, by the way, that she basically purchases the services of Jacob. Well, she gets pregnant. And so she said, God's given me my wages. And then finally Zebulun, Genesis 30, verse 19. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a 6th son and said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me because I've borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. And notice how all the through there that she's attributing this to God. And then one more child is born, and that is the daughter Dinah. Dinah is born. And so Genesis 30, verse 21, it says she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Okay, so that was about Leah. And as you go on here, we find, I think there's some lessons we learned from this, though. Okay, the rest of the time here for a few minutes to talk about this. And one is, don't look at judge by outward appearances. Obviously, in this case here, Rachel's the pretty one, the one of good form. We may say she had the figure. Leah was not. But which one actually attributed more to God? In God's instruction, when Samuel was supposed to go and anoint a king to take the place of King Saul, just stand out this. 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Okay, God looks at them. There was something about Leah, maybe it wasn't visible to everybody, but God used her to have these 6 sons that have become part of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so the instruction we have is don't be shallow in our assessment of people. Over in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 7, the first part of verse 7 says, do not look at things according to outward appearance. We need to keep that in mind. A lot of times we are quick to judge people by their height or their looks or outward things. Don't be shallow in your assessments. The second thing is, Leah prayed to God and he answered her prayers. And all the way through this year, Leah attributes these children to God. In Genesis 30, verse 17, he said, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah is placed in a lot of difficult situations here. And she's not the only woman to have been placed in difficult situations and the only person to ever face that. And we just should be reminded that when we face these difficult situations, remember to pray. Remember to pray, and we find trying times, don't forget to pray to God. And when we get through those times, remember who answered our prayers. Remember, God is the God who listens to and answers the prayers of his people. Don't forget, as Leah here, she's a good example of somebody that, despite all the terrible circumstances of an arranged marriage that was not, where she was not that loved, obviously that she was not as loved as Rachel, and yet she prayed to God. God answered her prayer. And then not only that, but also, look who came from Leah. And specifically, we see, first of all, Levi, Moses, the lawgiver, the deliverer, the prophet of God, came through Levi, came through Leah, not through Rachel. And then also through Levites, we have the priesthood. Aaron and his sons would be the priesthood. And then those who were not Aaron and his sons, but those who came from Levi, were servants of God in other capacities. And so these were people. It kind of reminds me sometimes of families you look at and you find out how many preachers they have or how many elders or deacons, and they came in that family, just like other families may look to see that they have a lot of maybe doctors, lawyers, or people like that comes to their family. Well, look at here. This branch of Leah's family were the priesthood. They were the servants of God in the Old Testament. And then, of course, Judah. I mean, how can you forget Judah? Judah, King David came from him. And we look and we see our Savior came through the lineage of Judah. That's the promise made. And so these are attributed to Leah, not Rachel. And the final thing is God looks at the heart. And so keep your heart pure before God. Keep your heart right before him. Because again, it's not our appearance God looks at, it's the heart of the person. God looked at David's heart. And God looks at our hearts today in our search to him. If you just keep these in mind. So this may not be the typical Mother's Day lesson necessarily. I'm talking about Leah, not in kind of a little different circumstances than what we usually talk about on Mother's Day. But, this last week, a cousin of mine, I posted a picture of her mom who passed away a few years ago. And her mom and my mom were very close friends. In fact, her mom was my dad's sister. And my mom and dad's sister, they hung around each other, and they were both very pretty ladies. I see the pictures of them when they were young and growing up, and they were very pretty and hung out together. And I just made a comment that, heroes don't always wear capes. Heroes sometimes wear aprons, and they are the ones protecting us and feeding us and training us and taking care of us and loving us. And therefore, the moms of somebody say, you don't know what your child is going to grow up and be. But we need to keep in mind of how you are shaping the lives of your children. And you are the heroes of today. I appreciate you watching. If you can, come be with us at LKilc Road. Our building is located at 1687 LKilc Road, Litchfield, Kentucky. On Sunday mornings, we have Bible classes at 9:30, worship at 10:25. Sundays at 5 p.m. we have worship. And then on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. we have Bible classes again. Come be with us if you can. Feel free to ask any questions. Hit the like button. feel free to share this also. Thank you. Hope you have a good day.